We'll see.
Good stuff. That's interesting. I was reminded of that, 'cause I do remember, because again, I remember a while ago having a chat with Chris. It may have been as part of a so-called interview I did that I recorded with him,
Right.
where I did ask him something, because I remember the whole $1 Million Psychic thing, which I haven't, it's gone to one side, and this may be something that helps resurrect it, because it's something that still interests me. So as part of that, to say, if we were, as a scientist, as one of the kind of leading skeptics on this stuff, is there been anything that you've come across that you think at least is impressive, hard to explain? And I do remember him saying, yeah, David Mandel was something he thought was quite curious.
Yeah. I mean, he definitely was curious, but ultimately, in the end, I mean, that's one of the ends of my chapter.
What, Chris French is bi-curious? Did you say that?
But at the end of the chapter, I kind of say, because I actually talk. There's one in there that I talk about a guy in nature, and he's on a plane and he's reading a magazine or something, and he thinks about a guy. He goes, "Oh, I haven't thought about that guy for 30 years," and then he turns the page and it's his obituary, and the guy works out the statistical likelihood of thinking about a person for the first time in 30 years and then reading his obituary, and the guy says, "You probably should get about one a day in the world." Do you know what I mean? And it's people have these experiences.
Yeah, I agree. Yes, and it is interesting when you have such experiences. So there's another one I could tell you about, but then again, are we still recording?
Well, we're recording, but we haven't.
But still, you might find again there could be a point we'll say, "Oh, it's a popular one. Well, listen to this extra supplementary bit where we carry on talking, and there's a few other bits." And I know we're kind of being a little bit self-important there, but even if it's for our own interest, even if in 20 years' time we go, "Oh, let's listen back. Let's listen to talk about there." That is interesting. It's like a blog. If you're doing it for yourself, think these are the things that are occurring to me at the moment. I'm having an outlet for it. This is why this is important to me, because this whole range of stuff, like it's all linked together. It's an opportunity to do stuff that where my head is at, and when I stop talking to you and we sign off, I go back to the other computer and go, okay, right, now's my marking, now what's expected there, what people hope I've got to do, what have I not done that I should have done. And it's having at least one little outlet where you can go, oh, let's just talk stuff because we want to, not because anybody's saying that's what you got to do.
Sure.
Which is one of those challenges. So the one I was going to mention was, again, it's a very personal one.
Yeah. And
that's actually featured in some other stuff that I started to do at Liverpool Hope. And didn't go very far for maybe a variety of reasons. So the story is this. So just in case you end up sort of pulling something out and you want to sort of just do this bit on its own, if it's ever sort of interest. So this is a story about essentially a in quotes, meaningful coincidence when I was sat, my then girlfriend, my then partner, my now wife, Rachel, who you know very well, Louis. Mm-hmm. We were sat in a car in Manchester, and lots of stuff going on in our lives. We'd not long been together, quite a kind of lot of set of events around us, and we were still always asking, what should we be doing in our lives? What kind of should we be doing? That kind of question you ask out. And we're sat in traffic, and then I sort of said, "Oh, that's interesting. I just saw something that kind of, if I ascribed some meaning to it, then it was quite interesting." She said, "Oh, that's interesting. So did I. What did you just see?" And we saw two separate things. So what I had seen was straight in front of me, behind, on a white van, was something that the word hope. At the time, I was working at Liverpool Hope University College, Liverpool Hope University, as it now is. So the word hope just caught my attention, thinking, what should I be doing? Oh, the word hope, it relates to my current work. And then separately, Rachel at my side had been looking a slightly different direction, had seen a bus go past with a number on it, 111 Piccadilly. Now, we were either in or near Piccadilly, so that wasn't that surprising that you could see a bus Piccadilly on it. And the reason that was interest to her, because she was working at a television production company, and the address of the building in which she was working was 111 Piccadilly. So at the same time, asking a question, it was almost as if one was going to give some meaning to it. And again, it's a choice whether you want this or not. We've just discussed, at least in the podcast bit of this, whether or not one should, or rather whether the reasons why one shouldn't. Is that, well, it almost said like, you're kind of you could interpret it saying you're in the kind of the places where you are right now. That's where you're working. Your mind is drawn to something in the environment that says, look, that's where you are. Maybe it's about relaxing, accepting how things are, and things will soon move on and things will be different. And that was now, let's say, 10-ish years ago. And it's still an experience that I go, yeah, It's an interesting one, and I have told people about it, and even people have said, oh, let's try and work out the probability. Well, that's really hard to. Even if someone goes, well, how often do you see these hope? Because the word hope on the back of this van was actually on what's called a hope safety bar. So at the bottom of a van, you have something maybe that stops other people bumping into it. I'm not sure all the reasons for them. They're quite common, as I've now discovered, so now I'm drawn to them. So whenever I see a van, I go, oh, look, hope safety bar. So it's not as if it's like, oh, what are the odds of that? But it had some personal significance. So again, it's an example of maybe it's not that unusual, but interesting enough that 10 years later, I'm telling you that to me, that was quite a striking coincidence, both for me and Rachel, about how we were at that time, what was important to us, what we could and should be doing, all those kinds of questions, which again comes back to those ideas we explore on this podcast about what's worth doing, what should we be doing. For some people, the experience of certain types of coincidence can give, people interpret them as signs. Oh, it's a sign I'm on the right track, or it's a sign that's not quite right because that coincidence is happening. And I have quite a lot of time for that interpretation, at the very least as a psychologist, even more so nowadays, as I explained in the Brian Epstein coincidence, in terms of, well, when I'm in a certain frame of mind, I experience more of these. So there you go. And that's that. So I've obviously silenced you into submission. You now agree that all these kinds of coincidences have perfect meaning, and we should all be.
I'm taken back to when I was, say, 17, and I used to ride the bus. It was a 2-hour bus ride from Streatham to Kingston, approximately, and I would listen to music on my headphones. Every day, I would be listening to a song, and the word that was being sung would appear somewhere in my visual cue, and again, I mean, from my personal opinion, I mean, it shouldn't come as any surprise that I fundamentally don't see any sign in a coincidence, but certainly they can be very striking, and certainly they can be very interesting. And I mean, I get it with people as well. I mean, I find it. I remember I bumped into an old girlfriend in London.
Not literally.
In London, and I was at a tube station. I hadn't been in London for 4 or 5 years, and I was stood there on a platform, and I said to Artie, "That's my old girlfriend over there," and she went, "No, it isn't. Don't be fucking ridiculous like this." And I went over to the girl, and I went, "Hiya," like this. And she went, "Oh, hiya," and we started chatting away because we had known each other. And Artie was kind of blown away because, I mean, I don't know about anyone else, but how often do you walk down a street in London when you haven't been there for 5, or go to a random city, and walk along the street and you bump into someone that you haven't seen in years and years and years? I mean, it doesn't happen very often.
No, and it almost feels, especially a city like London, but you're talking about anywhere in the world, like you're being somewhere, seeing somebody, and it's a classic. A skeptical argument would be, well, yeah, you can meet anybody, couldn't you? If you think of your whole network of people and people you know and people you may know, recognize, okay, I think what's important is someone was at some point in your life has been quite close, because often you may walk down the streets and go, oh, I think I know that person over there. It's somebody I think went to my brother's school, blah, blah, blah. Okay, You're talking about the extended network, and one could argue that from time to time you'll go, yeah, well, it's going to happen, and of course it is going to happen, but absolutely you're capturing this idea that, yeah, but when it does happen, it doesn't have the feel of, oh, that's just going to happen, isn't it, from time to time? Never mind. A lot of people will dismiss them like that. I'm just wondering, is there any value in giving it some sense of, well, even if it allows you to then reconsider that relationship and how it relates to your current relationship? I think that's where I'm guessing, not being a Jungian analyst or a psychotherapist of that nature, whether that's where people say, oh, it's worth exploring those because, and again, this will do my kind of off the top of the head sense to remember, one of the classic accounts in the literature is, again, if I get this wrong, forgive me, who is sort of listening. No, you got it all wrong there, mate. This is how it actually is. Carl Jung is in therapy session with a client, a patient, a customer, whatever you want to call them, who is talking through their dream. And again, it's someone who's sort of having problems with something, they're feeling blocked in some way. And somewhere in the dream is something about a scarab beetle, who's quite a prominent part of the dream. And as this has been relayed in the therapy setting, there's a tapping at the window that seems to be distracting. Jung seems to go over and maybe seek to open the window and explore what it is. And it's a certain type of beetle not a scarab beetle because that wouldn't be a common in that particular area, but it's almost the nearest, let's say, evolutionary cousin of such a beetle. So he does, again, people will probably tell us now, hopefully they're listening and bother to read, here, look at the actual account. But it's still that idea that in that context, he felt that was a symbolic representation of something to do with this person's dream, and perhaps even then discussing that apparent coincidence led to something helpful within the therapeutic setting. So I'm interested in this idea that whether or not there is some meaning behind it, whether it is just, oh, we're just seeing something, is there still a value in seeing something of importance in those types of coincidental experiences?